What's the fact that's real, but sounds completely fake? Australia exports sand and camels to the Middle East. We do have way too many camels. I can confirm this. I've seen them jumping around with a little camel in their pouch. Sharks, and many other things, were around before the Rings of Saturn had formed. The band Rings of Saturn was formed in 2009, so, no crap. And the band The Sharks formed in 1979. Fact checks out. When you get a kidney transplant, they usually just leave your original kidneys in your body and put the third kidney in your pelvis. Yes, this is true. Both my dad and little sister had kidney transplants. It was explained to me that keeping the old kidney in was because it still partially functions. Yeah, first time I heard that I was like, you've got to be kidney in me. That Netflix was founded a year before Google, and they used to post your films to you. I remember getting the flyers for the free trial during the freshers week in my first week of uni. I remember in college having to get a Netflix subscription for my German film class, and we all had to schedule the same movies at the same times, so they would come in the mail in time for us to watch them by the assignment deadlines. I also recall some of us having to watch together or pass around DVDs because there were only so many copies of some of the films available at a time, random old German films included, and 17 people in the same postal code couldn't each get a copy at once. Charlie Chaplin outlived Elvis Presley. It's amazing how many people think Chaplin died in the black and white film era. On a similar note, what do Anne Frank MLK Jr. and Barbara Walters have in common? They were born the same year. Things many viewers' history were lived experiences by people alive today. The first African American children to go to desegregated schools in the South are the same age or younger than most Redditors' grandparents. Many of our parents are the same age. My grandfather was born the same year as Anne Frank, and that always blew my mind. When baby horses are in the womb, their hooves are soft and have tentacles on them to prevent them harming the mother. They look really weird, but drop off in 30 minutes. Horse feathers. Would a Pegasus be born with feathers, or would it have fluff like a baby chick and then go through an awkward teenage fledgling phase? In Madagascar there lives a species of moth that feeds exclusively on the tears of sleeping birds. Madagascar must have some pretty depressed birds then. Kowalski analysis. A class of fungus known as mycorrhizae can infect the roots of plants, leaching away the sugars created by the plants, but in return giving them access to more nutrients, as the fungus can spread much further than the roots of the plant. The fungus can actually connect two plants together, allowing them to share nutrients and communicate with each other, warning of invading insects or pathogens so the other plants can prepare defenses. For example, in an underground network of sorts. I just learned this last week when I watched Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. It blew my mind. Something that really bothered me with that show is some people said fungi and some said fungi. I've never heard it pronounced the second way before. If we could drive to space, it would only take about an hour. The fact it would take longer to drive across Texas is crazy. Space is only about 100 kilometers up. Earth's a big rock with a very thin layer of atmosphere. Also, going to space is easy. Staying in space is hard. Woolly mammoths didn't completely die out until about 1,000 years after the Great Pyramids of Giza were constructed, and French explorers on expedition to the North Pole in 1872 found so many well-preserved mammoth specimens that they were able to survive by cooking and eating their meat. The first thing I knew, but the second part? That is amazing. Not only is the banana a berry, its tree is in fact not a tree, but a very tall herb. Add to yours meanwhile the strawberry isn't a berry, but the melon is. And for some reason most people I know are still weirded out by the fact that cinnamon is tree bark. The Hungarian word for cinnamon, fahej, literally means tree bark. Edit, grammar. The first part of our bodies that form are the asshole and the mouth, and then everything else grows in between them. We are a type of organism called a deuterostome, meaning two openings. Meaning, we were all born assholes. Many people never advance past that stage. Mantis shrimp strike their prey so quickly, with speed up to 51 miles per hour and acceleration up to 10,400 g, that it generates cavitation bubbles between their claw and the surface of the prey. The prey is hit twice, first by the claw at a force of 1500 newtons, and second by the collapse of the cavitation bubbles, which produces a shockwave strong enough to stun or kill much larger prey than the shrimp itself. They can crack aquarium glass and split open a human thumb. If we humans had this force to body ratio, we could throw a baseball to the orbit. I can throw a football over the mountains. There's actually only 8 different questions asked on Ask Reddit, just phrased 30 different ways. Plumber's daughters of Reddit, what's the sexiest lie anyone's ever told you about weird food from your country? I once won a game of Trivial Pursuit because I knew this. General Feldmarschall Jeb had Leberecht von Blücher believed himself to be pregnant with an elephant, fathered by a French infantryman. I learned in biology class that, if you have a gene turned one way, licorice tastes sweet, and if it's turned the other way, it tastes bitter. There's also a gene that does the same for cilantro and another one for celery. I like cilantro and celery, but I despise licorice. At least now I have an explanation why people would like that stuff. Australia had a prime minister that went swimming in the ocean and then just disappeared. We still don't know what actually happened to him. Also, we lost a war against emus. And there's an unconfirmed rumor, I think, that our current prime minister took a poo in a McDonald's. Edit, I should have been a bit clearer about this. He did a poo in his pants while he was still wearing them. We have a weird history. You need to edit this, because ScoMo didn't poo in a McDonald's. He shat himself in a McDonald's. Technically both are true. Vending machines kill more people than sharks per year. How? Sharks tend to give out healthier snacks and don't contribute to the obesity epidemic as much as vending machines. When was a shark handed you a pack of grandma's cookies? Those pictures of Chinese water deer with huge vampire fangs I thought were a hoax for years, like the drop bear. When I saw one I was like, what the hell, that's a real thing. Yeah man, Chinese water deer are metal, used to work in the countryside, and came across to raking at each other with those fangs. The noise was gnarly. The Isle of Scilly, pronounced silly, and Netherlands are not sure if they have been at war for 300 years, so they signed a peace treaty recently just to make sure. That's just silly. No, it's Sweden. The first humans didn't arrive in Madagascar from the African mainland, but from the Malay archipelago across the Indian Ocean. To this day Madagascans speak Malagasy, an Austronesian language. That kind of makes a little sense to me, since I understand that there was a bigger culture of transocean travel in an archipelago than on this huge continent that is Africa, which doesn't have a lot of islands around it. There was just no need or interest for this kind of travel. The distance from New York to London is less than the distance from Sumatra to Madagascar. It's almost 4,000 miles. It makes little sense. The Malay archipelago is an area that encompasses countries like Indonesia, the Philippines, and Australia, among others. It's 250 miles to the African mainland. For reference, it's around 3,400 miles from Madagascar to London. There are entire island countries between Africa and Madagascar, such as Comoros. Also settled first by people from the archipelago. You could hop from Africa to Comoros, then Comoros to France, and then France to Madagascar. France last used the guillotine in 1977. I assume they stopped using it after the French Revolution. Cest Marfort. The guillotine is actually one of the most humane methods of execution. We use the methods we do in the modern day because they look better to the viewers. Lethal injection can cause extreme pain even when done correctly. Gas is also extremely painful, and the electric chair is just hell on earth. The most humane way to execute someone is from close range with a large caliber handgun or shotgun to the lower back of the skull. Death is much quicker. Yeah, the objections to firing squads always puzzle me, especially with all the botched lethal injection executions that have happened in the US in recent years. I'd take the firing squad over an injection of a paralytic that suffocates me any day. Japan is suffering from a ninja shortage with salaries as high as $85,000. Maybe they just can't find them. The ninjas are way too good. There was a Chero army created here in Mexico to defend the country if the Nazis arrived. Imagine a similar outfit as the one the Mariachis have. That's a Chero. 100,000 men and horses using guns and machetes. Of course it sounds ridiculous to think that such army could make any harm to Hitler's forces, but the fear at that time was such that they would have done anything to defend the country. Have you heard about the Home Guard in Britain? War army uniform, but at least initially armed with agricultural implements, and basically consisted of older men and those who were unfit to be soldiers or in reserved occupations. There is a very popular comedy series about them, but they are quite revered. We are going to have a Home Guard parade in our village this year. I know we were closer to being invaded, but given the US involvement in the war, I get why Mexico also developed its version. The Home Guard were trained in asymmetrical warfare. Basically they knew how to set traps and ambushes. There are old bridges that are still rigged with explosives. My partner's granddad, served in the Home Guard on the anti-aircraft guns. He was an engineer working for the government and would man the guns after coming home for dinner after a day at work. Horses evolved in North America, spread to Asia, then went extinct in North America, and were reintroduced by European settlers, which means wild horses in America are technically feral animals. There is a lot of debate on whether they should be considered wild animals and protected as such, because they did originally live in America. Also, this means Native Americans only started riding horses after they stole some from European settlers. From what I know, the original North American horses were too small and weak to ride, so the natives just hunted them for food until they became extinct on the continent. It was the Asians who bred horses that were big and strong enough to ride. The British funded an invasion of themselves. Which time was this? Napoleonic Wars, specifically the Louisiana Purchase. Your brain predicts what you are about to experience before you actually experience it by an infinitesimal amount of time. Our vision, in fact, runs 100 milliseconds behind the real world, so our evolution has adapted our brain to predict what is about to happen before we actually see it happen, and it is usually right, but not always. Hence, our entire reality that we experience is actually a story that our brain creates of the real world, and not in fact an experience of the real world. Weird neuroscience stuff. I notice this with age, particularly with reading. My brain predicts words based on past experience and sometimes provides similar words that almost, but not quite make sense. I think it is also true in accidents involving older people. We get so used to our environment being a certain way that we don't quite see the difference between our brain's prediction and what is actually happening. Polar bears are black under the fur. The hair is also more clear than white. To test the safety of an aeroplane ejector seat today, you'd use a sophisticated crash test dummy with lots of sensors. In 1960, however, the US Air Force used a drugged black bear that weighed the same as a human pilot. This and vending machines have killed more people than sharks. I just surprised that drugged black bears being ejected from planes has killed anyone. I'm not. It has the element of surprise. Nobody expects to be attacked by a bear tripping balls coming at them from the sky. Bamboo is a grass. Echidna has four-headed bean. Peanuts are legumes, beans. Some carnivorous plants are sticky enough to trap birds, not the monkey cups in jungles. I'm talking about mats of sticky leaves strong enough to keep birds from flying away. Some people do not react with poison ivy, poison oak, or poison sumac. Giant kelp can grow up to 2 feet a day under the right conditions. Giant redwood and sequoia trees branches get thicker as you go up, allowing for unique ecosystems to develop at their canopies. Pineapple is a kind of bromeliad. Strangler figs literally choke other trees by squeezing their trunks until they die. Some plants have no chlorophyll and get nutrients by parasitizing other plants. There is no agreed upon botanical definition of tree. You're gonna have to expand on the whole four-headed pine thing. To expand the four-headed pine you might need to make the echidna horny. When doctors do surgery and have to get past your intestines, they just move them aside and shove them back in randomly when they are done. Your body reorganizes them on its own. Oh man, I had a hysterectomy when I was 27 and the most effed up part of the whole thing was absolutely feeling my organs slowly resettle over a period of weeks. That was the weirdest ever feeling, especially being newly -1 relatively large dense organ. I'm used to it now, but man, what a weird way to lose weight. The weight loss program that's sweeping the nation. Tyrannosaurus lived closer in time to us than it did to the Stegosaurus. I know that not all dinosaurs lived together at the same time and in the same places on Earth, but it still messes me up when I'm reminded of this fact, haha. People used to eat ground up mummies and put it into other products too. This created a market for it, which led to fake mummies, much more recently dead people dried out, being used in a similar fashion. I love that they still chose to use real corpses for their fake mummies. Like, why not just throw in some ground beef with stuff in it? Dolphins sleep with one eye open, gripping your pillow tight. Exit light, enter night. There are still people alive who were born before the Ottoman Empire ended. Damn. For context, the end was 1922. A wind-powered vehicle can sustainably travel directly downwind faster than the wind. Vertasium. I got a shade ball from him. It's signed and on my shelf. Quirky little trinket. The color orange is named after the fruit, not the other way around. And the fruit is named after the place it was imported to, England. Your body can't tell the difference between what is real and what you're imagining. Explains my crippling anxiety. Dumb brain believes itself. Butt load is an actual unit of measurement. It equals 126 gallons. Wine was measured like this, yes? We have lost the original videotape of Apollo 11. What we see is a camera recording a TV, because the process for sending image from the moon to the earth was not compatible with TV channels. And after the mission they forgot to check the videotape, so someone probably deleted accidentally what was on it to put a TV show or something. Scientist 1, yo, we need that tape for the Apollo mission. Scientist 2, the what? The Dutch ate their prime minister, at that time Johan de Witt, once in 1672. He was delicious. That Nintendo were actually founded in 1889. Yep, made playing cards. Trees communicate with each other via pheromones/scent signals, as well as other methods. They use this to warn each other about drought, disease, and to share memes. I'd like to know what kind of memes trees like. He turned himself into a table. Funniest crap I've ever seen. Tiffany was a common medieval name. Older. It goes back to biblical times. Strawberries are considered dry fruits, as the actual fruit are the seeds, not the fleshy part. Red blood cells don't contain your genetic DNA. What are you doing, step blood cell? A sandwich is named after the Earl of Sandwich, who wanted some non-sticky food he could eat while playing cards. I live next to Sandwich, and next to Sandwich is a village called Ham. If you can't deal with that truth, I live in Deal. Chainsaws were originally invented to assist with childbirth. Imagine hearing your wife screaming as she's in labor, and then you hear a freaking chainsaw revving up. Imagine being the wife. If you take a tree and uproot it, then take all the leaves off of the tree limbs and plant the limbs down in the ground, the original roots will grow leaves and the old limbs will become the roots. Life finds a way. The guy who sang Peanut Butter Jelly Time died in a police shootout while his brother-in-law Snoop Dogg tried to talk him down over the phone. Close, but not quite. He shot a cop and ran, then took 2 hostages, who managed to escape unharmed later during the event. The cops played a recording of Snoop trying to convince him to turn himself in, not Snoop directly, but he wouldn't. When they finally breached the apartment he had barricaded himself in, police found him dead with a gunshot to the head, presumably self-inflicted, as the police denied firing any shots at all during the standoff. Sharks have no bones. Their entire structure is made of cartilage. The United States Navy is the second biggest air force in the world, and the US Air Force is the largest, right? Nope, US Army/S. I get downvoted every time I answer this, but there are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Roundabout there are 200 billion stars in our galaxy, and about 200 billion galaxies total. Earth has about 3 trillion trees. So this is totally true. A Canadian soldier, Leo Major, single-handedly liberated the Dutch town of Zwolle from the Nazis during WW2. It's not even a small town. If your parents feed you crunchy food as a baby, you will grow a larger jaw. How to give your child the Chad chin. The word slang is itself actually slang for shorthand language. Slang is slang for slang. I have two. 1. Cleopatra 7. The Cleopatra was born closer to the invention of the iPhone than to the construction of the Great Pyramids. 2. Mansa Musa of Mali was the wealthiest man in human history. He was so rich, when he went on a pilgrimage to Mecca, he spent so much gold on the way there he actually caused rapid hyperinflation of basic goods. Because he devalued gold so severely, he actually had to buy the gold back at an increased rate in order to stabilize the entire regional economy. When you're so rich you single-handedly break an entire regional economy by spending money. There was a 22-year window where a samurai could have sent a fax to Abraham Lincoln. Ukraina, Polish, means borderlands, but Ukrainian, means homeland. And yes, these two words also mean Ukraine. Ukraine, German, means Ukraine. For a time the number of people who drowned by falling in a pool correlated with films that featured Nicolas Cage. My personal favorite spurious correlation is cheese consumption and deaths from being tangled in bed sheets. If your wife cheats on you, gets pregnant and gives birth, while married in Germany the law forces you to be on the birth certificate and to pay for that other guy's child until it is an adult and finished its first education, job training or college, even if you have 100% proof it is not your child. That's bullcrap in every level. Atropa belladonna, a deadly nightshade and beautiful lady, was previously used by women in Venice during ancient times to make their pupil size dilated in order to look more attractive for the men. It's now used as medicinal purposes to cause dilatation of the pupils by blocking a specific nerve receptor, and it's also classified as a poison. Cows have regional accents when they moo. They use reflective paint on reindeer antlers in Finland to prevent drivers from hitting them in the long, dark, icy winters. That banana flavoring tastes different to bananas because it was based on a banana that went practically extinct. Sounds made up. Totally true. Bonus round. Pretty much all supermarket bananas are genetically identical. There are more bacterial cells than human cells in your body. There are more water molecules in a glass of water than there are glasses of water in all the oceans. The density of the gas you breathe in affects the pitch of your voice. Low density gases, for instance helium, make your voice high pitched, but high density gases make your voice lower pitched. This is due to the way the sound waves travel through gases of different densities. The first US president to have gotten a divorce was Ronald Reagan, and he's been divorcing Republicans from reality ever since. Ayo. Even though the body of a caterpillar is almost completely dissolved during metamorphosis, the insect still recognizes toxic plants as a butterfly. Women see grass greener than men do. Good damn it, is this what they mean by grass is greener on the other side? There is a beetle that has a defensive spray that smells exactly like green apple Jolly Ranchers. BRB gonna go scare some beetles. George Washington never knew dinosaurs existed. Moose can swim, which is why the orca whale is a common predator of moose. TBH, it feels like the orca is a common predator of nearly everything that lives/sets foot in the ocean, aside from humans of course. The only human deaths have been caused by orcas in captivity as far as I know. The perks of being an apex predator, I guess. Airliners do not have oxygen tanks for the passengers. There are only oxygen tanks for the pilots. Correct. But passengers get a chemical oxygen generator that lasts about 15 meters depending on the plane. Plenty of time to make an emergency descent to denser air. Oxygen tanks for passengers would be impractical for weight, maintenance, etc. Oxygen candles. We have real invisibility cloaks now that work both on the human eye and electronic equipment, called wave-bending metamaterials. They bend light right around objects, as if they weren't there. I call this bollocks. So far we have achieved this for microwave part of the spectrum, but I cannot find anything about visible light, unless you can provide your source. Scientists suggest that the ring of Saturn is 100.1 million years old and shark species as a whole is 400 million years old. That means the species of sharks is older than the ring of Saturn. Evidently a few people's grandparents are also older than Saturn's rings. In 1970s scientists confirmed Chernobyl was safe. Chernobyl in this case means wormwood. It was believed that wormwood drove people mad. The city of Chernobyl is named after the surrounding wormwood forests. Cow farts are one of the easiest ways an alien species could detect life on Earth from across the galaxy. 72% of all statistics are made up. 86.3% of US citizens believe this. 150% of people have trouble with percentages. There was once a guy in China who got a peen transplant. It had to be removed soon after the procedure because it drove the man and his wife insane.